And one more athlete related topic for today. Although I don't know if this is a sport that many people like us consume. Well, I might be being bigoted. This one comes from the Shade Room. Salute to Shade Room. NASCAR driver Noah Gragson. Gragson. Apologies after being suspended for liking a George Floyd meme. So, NASCAR driver Noah, again, Gragson, sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, has issued an apology after being suspended for liking an offensive meme of George Floyd. The news of his suspension came ahead of the Firekeepers Casino 400. That must be the name of a tournament at the Michigan International Speedway, which Noah was supposed to race in. Okay, so we have this white passing NASCAR driver, NASCAR racer, and apparently it was discovered that he liked the meme of a George that relates to George Floyd, and obviously, as we know, George Floyd was the victim of police brutality, which unfortunately resulted. Oh, sorry, I got distracted by something. Which ultimately resulted in the brother's death. But before we cast any judgments, not that we cast judgments here, let's look at the meme in question. See if it's really offensive. Oh, that's the apologies. Let's look at the meme first. Just take it in.
He
Obviously,
got suspended for
obviously
liking.
it's super corny. You have to explain a meme, but I guess if you look or listen to it audibly, it's a picture of a crab with George Floyd's face on it, and it says under the knee. I guess because that Little Mermaid
Oh,
movie came out. But anyway,
these
I guess we're.
people have horrible sense of humor.
Yeah, this is just.
I
It
guess
could have
Probably
been funny, but
77,000 other people also have that same sense of humor.
I
guess
wonder
we're.
what those people look like.
I guess real quick we can look at his apology. If anyone's interested in that.
No one
It
wants
could
to
have
know.
been funny.
We don't
yeah,
really
it could have
wasn't.
been. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it could have been funny and racist, but it wasn't. It was just bad.
Uh,
I don't, is it
uh,
racist?
well, before we get, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll have to.
That's a
We'll have to.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we get,
Well,
okay, I was asking Ghost if you think it's a non-valid added to read his apology. Basically, he
I don't
apologized.
care what
He
you
said he's
say.
disappointed. The usual apology people give when they get caught for some
Yeah,
insensitive
this is
shit.
the PR apology.
Yeah. Okay, so go back to the meme, Ace. So we've heard this a bunch of times. This is your classic cancel. And I think you would argue this is kind of level of cancel. Usually, a lot of these cancels just are backlash, but this one, I think, when things start impacting your job. In this case, he did get suspended. I think it is when the cancellation is we can say there's it's impacting. Um, but obviously, at the end of the day, this is as you guys start to even though as you guys start to state, it is not funny. It is a meme, and I don't. You have to be relatively charitable, but there's no assumption that they believe what happened to him was justified, or they believe that, or they're racist. They just come across something on looks like it was Instagram, and they liked it. Maybe they got a quick chuckle at it, or maybe they said, "Damn, that's crazy," and they liked it and they moved on with their day. That's one way to assume. And even though, again, we don't find this funny, some people do, and obviously humor is wholly subjective. And I think looking at this, and this is kind of like the comedian's conundrum that has been going on for probably the beginning of time. But do you do y'all think that cause I think what this boils down to is in the category of dark humor. So I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if we ever had a deep conversation about this. What do you guys think of like quote unquote dark humor? And do you think it can and has a place to exist? And should it result in people getting like canceled over it, so to speak? Let's start with you, Ghost. What do you think?
I do think dark humor has its place. It needs some. It needs context. So, like, for one, you it helps if whatever you're making mockery of, if it's related to race specifically or sex or whatever, if you're if either you're that demographic or if you're just doing it in front of or with the or what's the phrase I'm looking for that demographic. So if you're making jokes about black people, you better be doing it in front of black people, even if you're white. It can work. Like there's some, I don't know if I'd say racist, but some borderline stuff, some controversial humor that is race related, but it's still funny, and it's not like the intent of it isn't to mock. It's to mock, but it's not in a mean spirited way. It's in you trying to make jokes, and you can do it, but again, it's got to be funny. That's the most important thing, and you can't do it. You can't make humor about black people in front of a white crowd that's not gonna say anything. Yeah. It's like it's completely different, but it does have its place. It can work.
I think I can pick up what you're putting down with the first point, but again, funny is subjective. So I guess it kind of begs the question, like, is there some things that are, even though you might find it funny, better to avoid because you should be smart enough to know that other people won't find it funny?
Yeah, I mean, humor's tough to gauge, but you kind of have to take the risk. And if the crowd's laughing, if more than half the crowd's laughing, then I think you can call it funny. But if you, again, it takes a lot of risk, because if you screw it up and you say something that you think is going to be funny, and the crowd looking at you and it's dead silent, and it's something that's offensive, then good luck. But again, that's why I'm not a comic. Salute to the comics that are in that world and do try to push the limit. But again, you gotta be a good comic. You gotta be funny. I don't know how better else to explain it, but kind of what it boils down to.
Got you. What about you, Wes? Do you think what do you think about dark humor in general? Do you think it's worth canceling people over?
Is dark humor worth canceling people?
Well, I mean, like this. Like, do you think, like this? Do you think this example? Do you think, somebody, people consuming dark humor and maybe thinking it's funny is warranted to cancel?
I think the problem with this is there's, as far as we know, there's no pattern here. It's one. He could have lied and said he didn't even know he liked it. Like, this is strange to me, and it's also, it's not inherently, to me, it's not inherently.
Well, I mean, past how it was discovered, just the fact that if, like, just an open vacuum, like,
if he was actually into, like, multiple occasions of this.
No, just like if maybe he was like in public and he laughed out loud at this. Like, if it was just discovered, like, the way it was discovered, the way it was identified that he thinks this is funny is not really the most important part.
No, I'm just saying, I think it has to be a pattern of actually racist content or overtly.
Do we know who suspended him? Was it NASCAR themselves, or was NASCAR, it like his team, or not his team, but his like managers or sponsors or whatever?
I mean, there might be something to that in the apology, but I mean, I think the fact that he was suspended.
Scroll back.
Legacy Motor Club.
Okay, so it's not. It looks like it's his specific. I'm guessing that's his specific. I don't know how it works in NASCAR.
None of us do, I guess.
Yeah, like that's why I don't think it's. I don't think you're gonna get any clarity by knowing who suspended him or what that means.
Well, I think it matters because, like, in the NBA, for example, if like that whole John Morant BS, it makes a difference if the NBA as a whole suspended him versus the team, because the team, they can kind of use whatever justification they want, whereas the NBA as a whole, or whatever organization as a whole, they have to have clear-cut rules that he broke that triggers the suspension. So I'm just curious.
I see what you're saying.
I don't necessarily. We're just talking about the context of getting in
No,
trouble,
it's
no
like a
matter who.
business not wanting to business with somebody versus the state or versus the government, the national government or something.
Well, I mean, we're not. Well, when the context of getting canceled, it usually has to do with something socially you did, not something criminally you did.
Well, that's the thing, though. If this is a social, he was on social
But
media when he liked this.
yeah,
It wasn't. He wasn't representing necessarily the club or the team or whoever. It was on his own that he did this. So it does make a difference if it's NASCAR as a whole. They say, "Oh, you can't do anything that's racist, quote unquote, or anything like this if you're in NASCAR."
Not that this was quote unquote racist to
Yeah, that's I guess
begin
another.
with.
But
I don't know. Maybe I'm not fully understanding you guys' point to the thing I'm wondering, but maybe you guys are introducing a
no,
more
it's like
important
saying
discussion.
should we make something illegal for versus should we make something the discretion of like in my example a business versus the discretion of the state.
I guess I
Um,
do see that point. Okay, so I guess you can answer it from both angles. Do you think dark humor should be outlawed, and do you think
I think so.
like it should be avoided?
I think dark humor is fine. Dark humor is funny. Uh, Life presents situations that are just dark and they're also funny. um, and when it's done well, it makes people laugh. I don't think there's a problem with it from that perspective. I think the problem with this is that it doesn't it doesn't show a clear pattern of behavior or intention toward a group that extends beyond a joke.
So dark humor is only a problem when it impacts the entire group. If I make a joke that's not funny to a lot of people, but funny to some people about some kid that died from cancer, that's cool.
Wait, if you made a joke about a
You
kid that died from
said it doesn't indicate a pattern, or it's not about a specific group or race or something to that effect. So I'm condensing it down to a specific. If I made a joke about a specific person, some kid named Jimmy Johnson, and they had cancer, and then they died, and I made a joke, and some people laughed, but a lot of people didn't. Is that cool?
Is it cool? If it's not funny, it's not cool. I mean, I shouldn't
You guys,
say.
but you realize we can't just land on it was funny because funny is subjective. Some people found this funny in this particular. Some people would find my joke funny. Like what? We
Yeah,
can't just
I mean,
give
when you
advantage.
say is it cool, what are you asking?
Would you? I mean, you. We should. You should. Sorry, let me not get to it. You should try to look at these from. You should try to look at these from. What is a good way to approach life, and what would you advise for people? That's how I'm trying to. Like that's just what I'm trying to.
I
Gather
think
from.
bombing the joke is not a crime, and I don't think that people should be penalized for it if that's what you're getting at.
Okay, so kind of bringing it back to this type of thing. You don't think somebody liking a joke should warrant them getting any type of repression?
I, s- I I said my problem with this is this doesn't show a pattern. A pattern should get somebody canceled, or
well,
I
I
feel
got
it makes
I have
sense.
a question
If
to
it's
add on
one
to that.
thing, I don't necessarily see it
So one
unless it's
okay,
So
so
it has to
it
be
can be
really
either. Okay,
horrible.
I'll let you go,
it's
Ghost, because I'm not rocking with what you're saying at all. Go ahead,
So
Ghost.
I get what you're saying, Wes, but what I'm curious about, you said it's a pattern, which makes sense. A pattern, like if he's liking jokes about black people getting killed by police, that's a clear pattern.
If
But
it's only that, or primarily that, yeah,
what
then you
if
can question
he's
him.
only liking things about specific people, black, white, Jew, any race, whatever, in unfortunate situation, like if he's just a devious dude, a malicious dude that likes
Yeah,
seeing other people suffer, and like Quest, like that example with the kid getting cancer. If he's liking 10 jokes about separate kids getting cancer and dying, then do you think that warrants a type of suspension because it's
I think
not race related, but
I
it's
think all of these
still
things warrant a conversation about his conduct and about how he carries himself because he is in the public eye, especially.
Interesting.
All of the anything that points to an unsavory nature in his character, I can see reasonably being questioned by whoever and wanting to say, "Is what's going on with you?" Like, and if it continues, or they might say, "Hey, we don't like this type of behavior, and don't do it," or whatever. Like, but I think
Don't be a
when
bad person.
I mean, he's a public person, so again, for him to endorse or to seemingly endorse messages that don't
don't be
make
a bad
sense,
person
yeah,
in the public
it
eye.
can indicate, it can indicate that these things are okay, or that the club or whoever represents these things that they don't want to be associated with. That's perfectly fair and good.
I suppose I actually do see your point. I was gonna kind of push back because I regarding like the frequency thing or the pattern of it, I was gonna say everyone would acknowledge that if someone's doing something multiple times, that is worse than a one-off situation. But but it kind of sounds like you're condoning. It can be incredibly dark and again funny to some people, but not fun to a lot of people. Even if it's a one-off case, then it's completely fine. But
Yeah, I say complete. I don't think necessarily completely fine, but it's like, as you said, humor is subjective. Something can really, really amuse somebody for whatever reason that nobody else finds funny, and it's not that he was necessarily racist or even thinking about the racist implications of the joke. For whatever reason, it just made him laugh a lot,
right,
and it's like, all right, that can happen once, maybe twice, but if you see a pattern of behavior, then that means okay, this guy literally is laughing at these people or this group or whatever
yeah,
because he doesn't like them.
yeah, I do what you're saying because you're kind of like trying to hone in on like what the joke kind of speaks to their overall character, and if it's a
Mm-hmm.
pattern, that's more of an illustration of it than if they just liked one particular post. So
Yeah,
I suppose I generally agree or
and I
understand.
mean the thing is too, like if somebody's sense of humor is just dark, let's say, but the jokes that they engage with are varied across the board, and they're also pretty universally accepted as, or not universally because nothing's but like 80% of people who see the thing get that it's funny. I don't think anybody's really going to put anybody on blast. They might still question his character again because he's a public figure and all that stuff. But I guess, speaking more generally to any individual, I think that person, if they just have a dark sense of humor and you see and you get it, it's not really going to raise any flags.
And then what about you, Ace? What do you think of a situation like this? What do you think of dark humor existing? Think it has a place?
Yeah, I definitely think dark humor has a place. I'm sure I've consumed it, although I cannot think of a specific example. And enjoyed it. I
I
one
mean, I think
thing
it's
that
for
was
the best you don't go exposing things that you find funny that other people may not.
yeah, that's something I was going to mention is like it's in this day and age you're basically screwing yourself over, especially if you're a public figure and you're not being careful about what you're doing. Like it, it's kind of like it's on these people to think about what they're engaging with and how it's going to look. Um, yeah, one thing I was going to say is I have a ton of difficulty divorcing the subjectivity of all this from my mind when I'm like looking at stuff like this. Like if it's not funny to me, I don't really care about what other people would think or what other people would um say or you know justify it as being funny or just their reaction in general. I'm still gonna think is stupid and judge them in my mind.
Hey, maybe we all building
And
our judgments.
yeah, yeah, and I think everybody else has. the right to do that too. So if you end up getting canceled, quote unquote, I mean, it's just a majority of people coming to the same conclusion that I am, and having an issue. Well, the only thing is, I'm not going to do anything about it, as opposed to other people who.
What about if it was reverse? What if you found something funny that other people didn't?
I mean, there's not much I can do about that.
But
if I reserve the right to judge somebody in my mind, I can't say other people can't do that to me.
Okay, I guess, yeah, I suppose that's fair. Yeah. Well, I think although I don't know if we dove into the subject of dark humor as much as I thought we would, but it's fine. I think one of the moral stories is essentially when it comes to stuff like this, maybe it's not. I don't. Again, you have to be kind of charitable. Maybe it's not about a specific joke, because if it was about a specific joke, then maybe we try to find whoever created it in the first place. I think it does. The things that we're publicly showcasing, even if we think it's relatively innocuous, because I'm sure when he liked it, he didn't think people would even notice that he liked it. It does, or it can speak to your character, which is why this kind of raises a red flag, because talking about this specifically, again, I think it's safe to assume, or you never know these people these days, but it could be safe to assume that, again, they don't particularly think that was a justified thing that happened to their brother. They could think it's unfortunate, but they could look at that little meme and think, damn, that's funny as hell. But again, it is about perception to a certain extent, which that's for better or for worse, and that depends on the culture of the society that you're in, and you do have to be conscious of these things. I think generally, and I say generally because again, even though I think we're all for humor being going the distance, I think that's changed over the years. Don't y'all remember how we had like a little topic? I forget what it was based off. It was based off. I forget what it was based off, but somebody damn near came in and said they believe that comedians should be like, we no longer need comedians in our society.
Yeah, I remember.
Funny. Like I think depending on the way society shifts, you could see a world in which like certain jokes just aren't gonna fly, and I mean that's happened over time. Like there's some jokes that you could make in the '90s even that you're not really making these days. So
you got many jokes in the 90s.
True indeed. So yeah, I always, when it comes to stuff like this, I do always like to point out how you do have to begin aware of the times. And again, you can do whatever you want. I'm also kind of going on to what you were saying. You can do whatever you want. Just don't cry about the consequences, or be somewhat aware of what the consequences could be.
Y'all ever scroll social media and see that little thing that says such and such like this post, and you're what's this person doing under this post? Liking this post.
Yeah.
I don't want to see something that could incriminate me. But
it's never been anything bad.
On some social media sites, you can turn that functionality off, so people can't see what you're liking. And I'm gonna just leave it at that. But yeah. So the sites where you can't see what people are liking, that can get pretty funky. But if there's nothing else on this, we can move on. How much you want to bet that meme was made by like a 5.5-year-old kid?
Yeah, right. Like I don't believe that too.
He should have got suspended just because that shit was so unfunny.
Oh my gosh.
Honestly, that is the level of pettiness I would kind of be on. This is not funny.
that. Like,